Hello and welcome to an undisclosed location somewhere outside of Shanghai, China, where we are going to get a first-hand look at the new model from Voyah, their entry-level compact SUV, the Soulmate. Welcome to Wheels Boy, where we cover the newest, coolest, and wildest vehicles from the Chinese car market. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. Now, we are going to get into all the details of this car inside and out, but first, a note on the name. I just referred to it as the Soulmate, but that's only one way to translate the original Chinese name, which is right here, Zhiyin. It could also be translated as best friend, but it basically means somebody with a keen appreciation for you and your skills. Either way, Soulmate is not the official English name for this vehicle, but for but for simplicity's sake, I am going to continue to refer to it as either the Soulmate or the Zhiyin in this video. But enough about what it's called, let's talk about what it is. And what it is a compact electric SUV. This thing is, well, we don't know what price it's going to be at this point. We won't know that until it hits the market later this year, when we'll be doing a test drive, so stay tuned for that. But it's probably going to be competing with cars like the BYD Song L. Like the Song L, it has an interesting combination when it comes to design of SUV and wagon. Here on the front end, there are a plethora of interesting design details. You have these swooping DRL lights that connect in the middle here at the Voyah logo. The Voyah logo is inspired by the kunpeng, or roc, R-O-C, a bird from Chinese mythology. To either side of that is probably the most interesting design detail in my opinion, and that's the air inlets here that exhaust, so to speak, or exit on the hood right here. I haven't seen a design cue like this since, what? The Jaguar I-Pace, one of the most beautiful cars, I think, of the last 10 or 15 years. Not a very good EV, but definitely a very beautiful car. This thing does give it a much more sporty look than I think almost any other car in this category at this point. There's also a lot of other interesting design details up here in the upper light cluster. I've never met a brand that likes their logo more than Voyah, and as evidence, you can see a bunch of tiny little blue Voyah logos inside of these lights. It's interesting to note that when Voyah discusses these air ducts, they do so by talking about the added stability and safety that they bring by increasing downforce, not performance, which makes sense because this is a family SUV, not a performance SUV. And yet, it's the first family SUV I've seen in a while that also has air winglets on the front end. Behind those air winglets, you see these pretty awesomely designed 20-inch low air resistance or low drag wheels, within which are, you guessed it, a bunch of Voyah logos. This thing has the overall shape of a kind of wagon SUV combo with that coupe-like roofline. Over on the side, you have a Voyah signature, which is this sculpting right here that flows back into the rear wheel arches and I think looks very, very nice. Above that is, well, this is not a production vehicle. This is a pre-production model, so some of these things could change, and this is one that I really hope they do change, because it says intelligent 5G, which just seems completely unnecessary and honestly unrelated to the rest of the car, but I digress. Back here on the D pillar is this nice little kink and hook that they've added to the design, which adds a lot of visual interest to this part of the car. On the rear, we have dual diffusers, certainly more for lowering air resistance than anything else. Those shadow the steeply raked rear glass. The lights back here, OLED units, specifically 66 individual OLEDs, which as you can see, do a nice little light dance when it's parked. According to Voyah, this is supposed to look like the exhaust of a rocket. And I'll be honest with you, the first time I saw it, I thought they were talking out of their you-know-what, but the closer I looked at it, if you think about these Voyah logos, of course, as little rocket ships, then yeah, I can kind of see that looking like an exhaust. The rear cargo area of the Soulmate measures 527 liters with the second row up, or 1,300 and, thank you, 28 liters when you lay it down. Underneath the floorboard is a honestly very impressive 72-liter storage space, which, as you can see, is very deep. Open up the frameless doors of the Soulmate, and you'll be greeted with an honestly very nice interior, provided you enjoy the buttonless EV interior look. Before we get to that, and we will, I want to talk a little bit about these doors and how you open them. Over here is the handle. There's no button like something like a Tesla. Instead, you have this little flap in here. It honestly looks very cool and it feels good to pull, but the placement ergonomically isn't great. I feel like it's a little too far back for me to be able to push with any reasonable force. The interior of the Soulmate is dominated by this 15.05-inch center screen, which is powered by a Qualcomm Snapdragon 8295 processor. Even more interesting to me, however, is the fact that it has curved edges, like a lot of smartphones these days. And as it was telling you in Chinese, it is moving the screen over. It can move the screen over to where it's in front of the passenger seat. We'll get into more of why that would be a good place to sit and watch something in a moment, but let's talk about, bring it back. Okay, thank you. Talk about the rest of the interior. You've got a 50-watt wireless charging port right here. You've got your 2 cup holders. You've got a quite deep, actually, center storage area and storage here between the seats. Storage space up in the front row here is actually pretty impressive. Door pockets, everything you would need. There are other screens in this car. Directly in front of me is a rather petite instrument cluster, maybe about 5 inches, but it's really very long and thin. The reason that it's long and thin is because it is more of a backup to the large augmented reality heads-up display that is also on this car. I've already mentioned the interior design is very simple. The only kind of design elements you're going to see are the little holes here on the center console, as well as here on the dashboard, to add a little bit of visual flair. In terms of the materials, again, this is a pre-production car, so I'll save my final judgment for when the production vehicle debuts and we can drive that. But I do think that they feel quite nice, including this micro suede headliner above here. So I teased this before, but why is it that this would be the seat that is most desirable to sit in when you had to, say, charge your vehicle? Well, not only can you do this and bring the screen directly in front of you, but you can also, either via voice commands or this button here in the menu, open your little airline-style tray table right here so you could maybe eat your lunch. A very small lunch, but still, it would be useful. The Soulmate has a wheelbase of 2.9 meters, so with the seat adjusted for someone of my height, that's 5 foot 9 inches or 1.75 meters tall, maybe actually a little bit farther back even than I would like it. I still have plenty of leg room back here, especially because there's this concave design to the seat backs. Headroom, also surprisingly good considering that steeply raked roofline. I think that actually starts right back behind your head. Here we have a fold-down center armrest, which I mention only so I can say that it's actually relatively sophisticated. Normally you just have one that folds down with a cup holder. This has got one coverable cup holder, but also a little storage area here for your phone. My favorite feature, however, back here, is certainly this, the design of the air outlet. I like the way it looks, but I don't think it's particularly user-friendly. You see, the way that you adjust the direction is by sliding it left and right, and the way you adjust the direction up and down is, well, you can't adjust the direction up and down. There's also only one air outlet here. There's not two, so right side passenger and left side passenger can't adjust them individually, which is a little bit odd in my opinion. But it certainly looks real cool. Later in Q3 or even Q4 of this year, when the Soulmate hits the road, we will be doing a test drive. However, for right now, we can only give you this static experience. We can, however, give you some information about the electric powertrain, or specifically the batteries. We don't know anything about the motors yet. What we do know is that it will have up to 901 kilometers of range. 901 on China's CLTC cycle. How did they achieve such a feat? Well, simple. They gave it a really big battery. This thing has 2 battery packs, but the range-topping one is 109 kilowatt hours. That's how you get a 901 kilometer range out of a car this big. If you were a normal sane person, you'll probably buy the 79 kilowatt hour battery pack, which is, by the way, still quite large for this category of vehicle, which will give you 650 kilometers of range. This thing also rides in an 800 volt charging architecture, which means that it can charge from 20 to 80% in 10 minutes with a peak charging power of 400 kilowatts. It says, or rather, Voyah says, that they can charge 515 kilometers in just 15 minutes. That's going to do it for our static preview of the Voyah Soulmate, aka Jiyin, but you definitely want to like, subscribe, and hit the bell, because Wheelsboy will be getting invited to the test drive events for this vehicle, making us among the first, if not the very first people on YouTube to actually drive it. So again, like, subscribe, and hit the bell.